Everyone, from me, Brent Graham. It's the Stage 20 betting preview of the Tour de France. We're almost in Paris, but we got one pretty hectic and exciting looking stage ahead of us. Before we get into that, though, let's talk about what happened on Stage 19. An absolutely thrilling finish from the breakaway. Mohoric eventually pipping Asgreen on the line. To the naked eye, it really looked as though Asgreen had got back-to-back wins. I must point out I wasn't on Asgreen this time. I wasn't on Mohoric either, but well done. He did have plenty of backers. And an absolutely brilliant win from a guy who hasn't stopped trying the whole Tour de France. If you haven't seen his interview yet, because I missed it afterwards and only caught up with it later, I was bouncing to other sports. My mom actually told me about it, and I watched it, and it was one of the best interviews I've ever seen. Very emotional, and gives you a bit of an insight into just how much these guys suffer out there. Ben O'Connor, I thought he looked excellent as well. He came third. As Mohoric said in his speech, O'Connor had to, there was a three-way sort of breakaway from the break that contested it in the end, and O'Connor, he's not the sprinter the other two are, so he had to go for it early, and Mohoric was watching him. Asgreen got in his wheel, and Mohoric eventually came around. Philipsen once again winning the battle from the sort of remaining bunch, and I've got to say another good ride from him getting into the breakaway, although the guys were never going to pull him all the way to the line. And I don't think his teammate Mathieu van der Poel was a top sort of strength, because I think he could have perhaps closed the gap to the three guys if he was. Anyway, Pedersen a bit unfortunate on the stage. He looked very strong. But a good stage, obviously no change there to the yellow jersey standings. But the most thrilling part of that stage, aside from the finish, was just watching that break form. It took so long. And then when it eventually formed, a couple of teams realized we didn't make it. And the directors put them on the front, and they closed the gap down. And eventually, there was an absolute mess, in fact. And eventually we emerged with this break. I did put a late bet on Pidcock. I had him in the break there. I followed Groot Lem on that one. Unfortunately, Pidcock, he was in the break. He just doesn't seem to have the legs at the moment. Really, really suffering. Right. Let's quickly have a look at some of the other classifications here. Obviously, we've got the top yellow jersey is Vingegaard. He's 7 minutes ahead. There's nothing Pogačar can do about that anymore. It would take an absolute collapse from Vingegaard to bring anyone else into the picture there. But, from third to, seventh here, Jay Hindley, you've got about 4 minutes. So there's going to be lots of watching each other today, because as you'll see now from the stage, this is one where a break is going to go hard. It's going to go, I don't say it's going to go early. The attempts to get into the break are going to start straight away. And I think we're going to have a real battle from certain teams trying to control the break. Just quickly look at the King of the Mountains jersey as well. We've got Ciccone at 88 points, Gal at 82, and Vingegaard at 81. I'm going to come to that with my suggested bets, so we'll come back to that. But let's have a look at stage 20 now. It's nothing like Wednesday's stage in terms of attrition. You can see the climbs here are not that long, but they're still pretty tough. And I can tell you there are some incredibly tired legs at this stage of the Tour de France. It sort of starts off for the first 8 or so kilometers a gradual rise. So it's certainly not an easy start. And then we hit the first Cat 2 climb, 11.5 kilometers at 5.2%, followed by a descent. We then have a sort of, I suppose you call it this rolling terrain that is so good for breakaways. And then we got another Cat 2, a third Cat 2 in a row. We moved down to a Cat 3. And finally, we end off with back-to-back Cat 1 climbs. The Petit Ballon at 9.3 kilometers at 8.1%. Descends straight down, and you climb the Col de Platzwasel. And I don't know if I'm pronouncing that one correctly. It is 7.1 kilometers at 8.4%. Guys are going to be absolutely spent by this time. And the stage sort of ends on the plateau. They're very short stage, 133.5 kilometers. So this is the sort of stage that can be controlled. And let's talk about that now. Let's quickly look at the outright betting first, because we've got Jonas Vingegaard here. He was 2-1, and he can be back to 2-1 with other bookmakers at the moment, but he's 15-10 with WSB. You'll see, I recommend if you're going to back Vingegaard, taking him into 15-10 with WSB, because you have a money back for second place insurance there. We'll talk about that when we come to my bet. Pogačar 5-1, Gal 10-1, and you got 18-1 at Better the Balance. Back to the profile there. The question is it worth backing anyone from the break here? Yes, potentially the break could stick. We don't know what's going to happen out there. I mean, you're going to get a very strong break that's going to go away. It's going to have a number of climbers in. What will be very interesting is who is going to be in that break? Because although Vingegaard doesn't really have to worry about anybody getting into the break, he won't let Pogačar in the break, of course, and he wouldn't let like Adam Yates in. But possibly Yates might get away with it, but he's definitely not going to let Pogačar in. But aside from that, he's not going to be too worried who gets into the break. And it's going to be interesting because you're going to get guys, if we go back to the classifications here, you're going to get guys like if Balboa gets into the break, that's definitely going to be an alarm bell for Simon Yates and Rodriguez, and their teams will start chasing. So it's going to be very difficult for Balboa to get into the break unless he takes a Rodriguez and perhaps a Simon Yates with him in the break. So we're going to get a thrilling battle for the break. Absolutely no doubt about that. One way or another, a strong break is going to go clear. But I don't think they're going to go far ahead because I think Jumbo-Visma are going to sit on the front of the peloton. They may stick someone up, but I don't think they're going to bother sticking someone up the road. I think it's going to be all six of them and Vingegaard riding on the front of that peloton and just keeping that break within a couple of minutes. And I believe, they're going to burn. I mean, Laporte is riding brilliantly at the moment. They're going to burn all their matches, and their aim will be to set Vingegaard free on this final climb. There is quite a headwind into the final climb, which is not ideal for a solo sort of breakaway. But Vingegaard has just looked so strong at the moment. I think he wants a mounted stage win, and I think his team are going to be able to control the short stage and give it to him. So I see a very, very battle for the break, a strong break going clear, and then Jumbo-Visma wearing that down. I would see them catching the final member of the breakaway somewhere halfway up this final climb, and then Vingegaard attacking over the top or quite well before the top prep even, because I think he'll want to win solo. He doesn't want to risk a sprint finish. It's not to say it will happen, of course, but that's the way I see things going. Let's have a look at my bets then. I'll start off with my stage win bet. I'm going 3 units on Vingegaard and 15 to 10 at WSB with that insurance for second place, just to bring up that banner here. Now, as I say, I don't do this every stage. Sometimes the second place insurance is not that much of an incentive on a 50 to 1 shot, for example. But definitely worth a go here because I could see a lot of scenarios where Vingegaard could come second. They mistime the catching of the break, and someone like Felix Gall, who you'll see now, I think goes into the break, is too far ahead and manages to ride to the win. And Vingegaard, the other day, he rode into 4th place, but effectively, similar scenario, he could come second. You may also find Pogacar's got good legs and manages to stick to Vingegaard's wheel, in which case you back Pogacar in a sprint finish between the two. And there's a few scenarios. Him and Kuss, who isn't riding that well at the moment, but they break clear of the field and he decides to give his teammate the victory. So take that insurance if you've got an account with WSB there and you do want to back Vingegaard. The next thing I want to look at then is the King of the Mountains, and I'm going to go with a bet here. The best price I could find was at Sunbet is 3 to 1, and I'm going with Gell to win the King of the Mountains. So just to have a look back here on these staged. On these climbs, that would require for Gell to win the King of the Mountains, he will have to get into the breakaway. That in itself will ensure there's quite a chase on behind, and we might even get a few strong guys in there. Ciccone, of course, currently the leader of the King of the Mountains. No doubt he's going to be going into the breakaway, but I haven't been impressed with Ciccone's legs. I actually think he's battling a bit at the moment. So he's hanging on to that King of the Mountains, and he really needs to try and get over these peaks early. I think Gell is going to get in the breakaway with him. And if we have a look, and I'll bring back this one I pulled up the other day, the King of the Mountains. Cat 2 climbs are worth 5 points at the top for the winner. Cat 1s are worth 10. So if we have a look at that, we've got 5, 10, 15, and then Cat 3, 17. We've got 17 points in the first 4 climbs, and then we've got 40 potentially at the top of the next climbs. So I believe that to win the King of the Mountains, it's going to be crucial to top this this first category climb here, and I think Gall has got the legs to do that. He may even be able to go on and win the stage. Of course, he's only a 10 to 1 shot there, but I can see him doing that. Alternatively, possibly his AGR2 team, and I'm sort of thinking here, if they don't get into the break, they might help at the front and make sure that Gall goes over this 20-point climb first here, because I think he's got a very strong chance of winning the King of the Mountains. Vingegaard could get it, of course, if Gall and Ciccone don't get all of, one of them don't rack up all the points in these early climbs. Vingegaard could even pick up some if the chase is really on at the top of this Cat 1 climb. But if he presses this first, he obviously gets 20 points. So he's certainly not out of the race either. But I think it's between Ciccone and Gall, and I actually just don't think Ciccone's legs are there. And I also think, what I think is that Gall has got his stage win, and he's going to turn his focus now to the King of the Mountains. And he's got a great ally and a guy like O'Connor who can help him get into the break and also help him put the pressure on and take those King of the Mountains points. They may well even be able to drop Ciccone quite early so that Gall can take these points on his own. Bottom line, I think Gall is a pretty decent bet here at 3 to 1. Right, that brings us to the end of this preview. It should be another excellent stage to watch. Tomorrow, of course, will be the procession into Paris before we have a great sprint finish. And no doubt Philipsen will be trading at around 8 to 10 even money for that one. He just has looked so dominant in the sprints. But enjoy the stage. If you're punting, hope you have a good run. Today, I'll be spending my time bouncing between the Tour de France and the Open Golf, where my 150 to 1 shot Brian Harman currently leads by 5. So I'm in for a nervous day and hopefully a nervous 2 days on that one. Enjoy the tour.